All right, I would like to call the Litchfield Budget Committee meeting to order. This is November 30th, 2017, and if we could begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are down one person. John Brunel's not going to make tonight. Hopefully we have Kevin Pork, who's going to be his substitute. He was going to try to make it here, and we'll see what happens. Our next agenda item, public input. We have a room full of school people here. So does anybody want anything to say at the beginning? We're at public input.
Public input?
Yes.
Okay.
Nicely done. He always has something to say. Perfect entrance.
I've been here in such a long time. Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Chris Pascucci, 12 Colonial Drive. I've only been watching parts of all of this lately. I know there's a discussion of full-day kindergarten. I'm not sure about all the details, but I'm actually here to speak for full-day kindergarten because I always believed in it. I've sent my kids to full-day kindergarten. Actually even sent my kids to, what do you call it, part-time preschool, 3-4 program. But I've heard it said that Litchfield does not have a full-day kindergarten program. In fact, Litchfield does have a full-day kindergarten program. It's just not taxpayer-funded full-day kindergarten, but there are plenty of options in this town for anybody that wants to participate in full-day kindergarten. There's parochial, there's private, there's homeschooling. So I wanted to clear that up. We were also told that, I think it's about $500,000, is that what the projected cost is so far? And we were told, but really, I think, what is it, adding to the budget about 115? Please excuse me if I don't know all the details. And excuse me because I'm out of breath, too.
Yep, nope, that's right.
It's, actually, I want to clear that up also. I want to understand it, and I'm looking at it from a different perspective. It's $500,000 is what it's going to cost. It's not 150. I understand part of the money comes from the state, which is just from the other pocket, our own pocket. Some was coming from, if I also understand this, teachers that are currently in the budget, in other grades, being moved over to kindergarten.
Yep.
So I guess if you look at the bottom line, it's not an added cost, but it is. Because if teachers aren't needed, let's say if they're in second grade or third grade, they're not needed. That means they're out of the budget. Then they have to be brought back in for a different purpose, so that it is an additional cost. I fully understand, as kids go up through the grade, if you don't need a teacher in the third grade because a bigger class is moving through, already in the budget, you take that teacher, put them into the fourth grade or whatever. That makes total sense. This is now teachers that aren't needed due to less students should be removed from the budget, but right now they're actually being moved, if this proposal stays in the budget, to a part of the budget with something that currently doesn't exist. It's a new program. And I'll talk about more about that later. And then the rest of it is about, I guess, gambling money, Keno. That's, I mean, that's just a big gamble is what that is. Full-day kindergarten is not mandated, we all know that. Parents by law don't have to send their kids to kindergarten. I agree that it's a great thing, that transitioning into first grade, it's a benefit, it's a fantastic thing. But that's not the debate that should be in this room. That's not the debate that the school board should have brought to you. That's a great debate that the school board and people in this room individually should have with the community, door-to-door campaign, TV commercials, articles in the newspaper, whatever it takes. That's who you have to sell. The school board right now and the administration is trying to sell the 9 of you on this because it's easier. It's easier to sell 9 people. Really, it's about 4 people they have to convince. And then it goes in the budget. I know some might say if it's in the budget, the voters still have a choice, but really, voters don't, because they'd have to turn down an entire budget if they don't like one component of it. It's like a poison pill. The real choice is making it a real choice. I've also heard it said that Litchfield has the 8th highest income in New Hampshire. I think I saw that at a school board meeting. I don't know what that has to do with this, but if that's true, if the parents of this town are so wealthy in the state, for the 1 year they have to send a child to kindergarten, as they're doing now, they could still send the child to kindergarten. It's, to move on to the next point, it's, I guess it might shock some people. So I'm not here to shock anybody or to make an inflammatory statement. But nobody in this town owes a full-day kindergarten education to anyone because it is not mandatory. It's not law. And I'm talking for legal reasons. It's not owed, which means if it's not owed, it should not be in the budget, unless the voters vote to put it in the budget. And if that's the case, then we all do owe it. If the voters vote for it, then we all do. And I'm okay with that personally now as a citizen. If the voters vote for this on a warrant and full-day kindergarten, even for that matter, if the voters vote to make taxpayer-funded pre-kindergarten, I'm okay with that. But it needs to go to the voter, and everybody needs to vote on it. Because that's the creep of government. When part-time kindergarten was put in years ago, there was some that said that this just is going to mean that now full-day kindergarten is going to come. And it's just natural, it's a progression. We're almost there. Here we are. And which means then 4-year-olds transitioning into kindergarten. Now, they're going to be at a disadvantage because they're going to be parents out there that are sending their kids to private pre-K. And now those other kids that aren't going to private pre-K are going to be disadvantaged. And that's the creep that we naturally get to. And it has to stop, and it has to stop at the vote at this table. It needs to remove from the budget. And everybody needs to go out and sell it on their own and do whatever they have to do to sell it, if they want it to work. It's an expensive program. Even if we have it, you can't force the parents to send their kids to this program. Just like right now we have part-time kindergarten, that's free. Yet there are so many parents sending their kids to kindergarten in St. Francis, in, I forgot the names of some of the other ones, but there's plenty of them out there, and some are homeschooled. So just because we have it, and the truth is it will transition the kids better to first grade, and we're spending all of this money and creating a new entitlement, it doesn't mean that anybody's even going to use it. So that's where the argument kind of dies as to why it should be in the budget. So please do the right thing. If anybody at this table votes to keep full-day kindergarten inside the budget, please explain to everybody why you're doing it. Please explain why you think it's in your purview to add that in and force people to either vote an entire budget down because of that one thing, and explain to us why you think you would rather make that decision to have all the taxpayers pay for a small handful of kids to go to kindergarten full day, or not even go to kindergarten, to have it offered because they're not even going to it. They still might not, or might choose not to go to it. So just so people fully understand, this is the last thing I'm going to say. I am a proponent of full-day kindergarten. I believe wholeheartedly in that early childhood education. I wish everyone would send their kids to full-day kindergarten. It is available. I keep hearing we're a very wealthy town, so the parents that choose to have kids, and if they want to send their kids to full-day kindergarten, they have a half-day kindergarten choice right now that's free. If they want full-day kindergarten, they're free to do it. But the retired in this community, the people without children, the young folks moving in, they should not have to pay for it. I know in the big scheme of things, it's only a little piece of the budget. But our budget is rising drastically every year. It's continuing to rise. I'm not complaining. I know I've fought for years to keep the budget as low as possible. I could afford it. I'll work a little harder, raise my taxes. I'm always more concerned about the people that truly can't afford it and that are working harder, and every time the dollar goes up on the tax rate, it's that much of a struggle for them. Now, I understand there's obligations to living in a town such as Litchfield, a beautiful town, and people know they have to live here. They want to live here, they have to pay it. But it's only fair to give them the choice on this one thing, because it's a very expensive program. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to head back out. Have a good night.
Good night, Chris. All right, any other community input? All right, moving on, review and additions to the agenda. Just the things that are listed here, but just to make you aware that I did move member input miscellaneous business up to take place at the start of the meeting for two reasons. One, the other person actually that we're missing tonight is Julie Green. We did actually get a resignation from her because she has taken the full-time temporary library position. And so she had indicated she might be interested in coming and speaking to the committee. So I wanted to leave an opening at the beginning of the meeting in case she did want to come and talk about, talk to the committee. So she decided not to, apparently, and we did get her resignation in writing. So in regards to that, we have some options, and that's what I want to get a feel from this committee, what you want to do. After today, we have a meeting on December 7th, December 14th. Those are our last scheduled meetings. We then have our hearing on January 11th. We have deliberative sessions on February 3rd and February 10th. So we could bring somebody new on. By the time we brought somebody new on, I think there's probably only going to be, if we could bring someone on at the very next meeting, there'd only be one meeting they would be able to attend. Or we can leave the position empty and just continue on with 8 members. And maybe there's a third option, but you'll have to tell me what that is.
So I am definitely more in favor of just proceeding as is. I'm just concerned about tie votes and how that works.
We used to have 8. We used to have 8, but also there's no guarantee we're all here at every meeting anyways.
I won't be here on the 14th, so
yeah,
we'll have an odd number.
And we're going to be missing some people next week. So far we're missing one person, 2 people tonight. So there's no guarantee we'll ever have an odd number anyways. So.
Yeah. I think it would be very, very difficult to get somebody up to speed at this point. Unless we had someone like chomping at the bit saying,
who's been following all along every night.
I was hoping Chris was going to say that he wanted to go
That's why he was here.
Word travel fast.
Any other?
I agree with Jen. It's hard enough to come in September and even over the summer or early in the year after the election, and if you haven't done it, to come up to speed and understand all the conversations and questions that have been asked and answered. So I would say we just press with the quorum we can get for each meeting.
Yeah. This side of the table?
Yeah, I just think for continuity reasons at this point, it's, we're just going to be filling the seat at that point, and, I think we can certainly, we're wicked smart, so we'll get through this, so, and we can pound through. Get it done.
Keep moving forward.
Okay. All right, so we will just continue with the membership that we have, and there are 4 open positions in March. So sign up now. No, not now, but sign up soon. All right, and then the other reason why I moved this up is Dennis asked if he could speak to the committee before, at the beginning of the meeting, so.
You're not 42, are you?
No.
So he has some information that he wants to share with us. So the floor is yours, Dennis.
So I went back, and I'm going to give Cindy some props for some assistance she gave me with some of the data. I wanted to look at what's transpired in the community over, the last 10 or so years. We always look at the projections moving forward and where we are, but it's always nice every now and then to look back at where we were and how we got to here. So I went off and did some historical research across the school budget, the spending, class sizes. So my sources of data, all my enrollment information is either off the state website, which is the average daily membership, I think ADM stands for, and then the enrollment projections that were provided to the committee. The cost per student information is, again, off of the state website, and then based on what happened over the last 10 years, projecting out at what the average has been to look at that. The budget information, a lot of the history comes from Cindy's spreadsheet that she sent me, which you'll see in a second on the next slide, and then projections out based on that if you want to look forward. Spending information is pulled directly from the district audit document, so if you want to know what was spent in 2010, I pulled that directly out of the audit document. And then the CPI information is from the Northeast, which has Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and Connecticut included inside of it. So if you look at the student count over time and the budget over time since 2007, it's odd how the numbers work out. Our average daily membership is down 26.1% since 2007, but our budget is up 26.1%. And I think I actually had to go to 3 decimal points to get it to be something different across those two. So the dip you see there in 2012, we had an expected loss of $2 million in state funding. We did preparation 1 year in 2011 and tried to underspend as much as possible to carry some money over, and then reduce the budget, which then ultimately the state brought money back. After the budget was approved, which there was a special meeting, you can go read about all that. I highlighted the 2 years where it looks kind of flat, where the default budget was actually approved by the voters. And then you can see the rise over time, and then the last year is a historical average increase year over year factored in. You can see the count going down. The count does not include pre-K, because pre-K is not factored into the average daily membership, so I took that out of the October count and the projections.
When does kindergarten kick in on that one? Because that'll affect the average daily count, too.
I think it's the flat you see
I
in,
think it's 2009, so 1557, 1542.
All right.
yeah, there's,
Because if we took that out, that'd be even more interesting.
yeah, but I was trying to stick with the data that the state
No, I understand what you're saying. It's just that the earlier years, we didn't have kindergarten, so it wouldn't have been included in the count.
Yeah.
2009.
So this is actually Cindy's spreadsheet. This shows the budget over time. So in 2001, which Cindy gets credit for having the data that far back. I'm not even sure the Google Wayback Machine.
This is something that the superintendent put together, I think, a year ago, and shared
So,
with the committee that I still
thank
had
you to the
access to.
superintendent.
I think it was just her school board.
Again, I had asked for some historical information, and Cindy said, "Oh, let me have something. I'll send it to you." The yellow highlights are when the default budget, when the operating budget failed, and we ended up with the default budget. But you can see in the span of 17 years, we've gone from about 12 million to about 22 million. It's a rather large increase over the last 17 years. If you can also look at a different way, the same student count plotted along with what is our cost per student over time. And then again, I took the average of what it had been for the past 10 years and then factored it out, which is why the graph straightens out there at the end. You can see that since 2007, we are up 78% in what it costs us to educate a student for the state's data. I actually tried to go through the budget, through the audit statement, and come up with the same numbers as the state, and I don't know the magical incantation of exactly what has to be removed and not removed. So, because I was trying to project forward, but I just gave up on that.
Can I ask a question, please? Did you look at how this compares to, like, the state average? Because I know that our spending per student is pretty much in line or
We're
less
slightly
than
below.
with the state.
It's
So
less
how-
than $1,000, and the state is up 51% in the same time frame.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy, actually, I had sent it ahead to Sydney so she would know what I was presenting, and she
I
said,
asked
I have the
that
same question, so.
Thank you.
I did look at that data, and it's 51%. So to hit on Chris's, with kindergarten, I wanted to go back and look and see what was the school board's plan to get kindergarten into the district. We can debate as much or as little about how much has been done across that. I did go back through a year and a half worth of minutes to try to analyze what was done against the goals. What really struck me is the second bullet from the top, which says, put it on a warrant article. It seems like pretty clear direction, at least for me, on what the school board expected to do with kindergarten, no matter what may have turned out. So I went back.
I mean, otherwise, their timeline seems on, kindergarten, August 8, 2018, right? They're pretty close.
Yeah.
Everything else?
So I went back and looked through the minutes, and so I started in 16, and the first reference I found was in October of 16, indicating there had been a discussion about budget and building, and I'm not going to read the slide. Everybody can read the slide, I'm assuming. A little low to the 125 and 17, where they talked specifically about the goal that I just showed from the school board goals, and what had been done. And then, basically, I can't see because Cindy's in the way, so, between January and November, September of this year, I couldn't find anything relating to full-day kindergarten in the minutes. There were discussions about kindergarten enrollments and what was happening, all of that. There was a discussion on the 6th, and then there was a discussion on the 20th to put it in the budget. So, I don't know what all research has been done, other than the details that came out with, they know the size of the space they believe they need, they believe they know the cost of that space and the cost of teachers and equipment. I, for one, didn't know anything about full-day kindergarten. I pay somewhat close attention to what happens in the town. I didn't know anything about it until it rolled around in September, and I believe it was all driven by the fact that the state offered up $1,100 additional at some point in the summer when the kindergarten bill actually became law. So I just wanted to run through that and just explain what I had seen and what I was looking at. And what I'm concerned about is, you can go back and look at the charts. To Chris's point, it's somewhat unsustainable to continue to expend, to have budgets rising in times of lowering enrollment. If you look at a $14,000 per year student, what happens when 40 new students show up? It's $420,000 extra that should go into the budget. And I don't have any problem, being on the school board, I don't have any problem when I was there. If the budget needs to go up to support rising enrollments, the town has historically supported that. And some of those budgets, when they went up, it was actually for increasing enrollment.
Was that compared against inflation, those increases?
The CPI chart, should I skip it? Maybe I skipped it.
So you're talking about, it's a 78% increase over those years per student?
I have a chart.
And then how does that compare with
Oh,
inflation over that same period?
yeah, I can show you that. Hang on, for some reason, the slide was not showing.
So I mean, what's the real dollars of how much the increase is?
So I can't tell you the real dollars, but, oh, come on. The blue is our cost per student increase per year, and the brown is the CPI for the four-state region, Massachusetts, Maine, Connecticut, and New Hampshire.
So what was the average CPI over that same period, for the region?
Less than 2%.
It's that, so the orange is the trend line over year, and you can see the CPI is fairly flat.
It peaks at 3.5 and has a low of -0.7. Looks like if you straighten it out, it's under 2.
I'm sorry. The 1.5% at the end at the projection, that is the average of the years before. And the 3.8 is the average of our cost per student increase.
See, I think I understand that the concern of the cost per student, but people have a right to add it, but I think they have the right to be asked. Like, if people want kindergarten and they understand what they're accepting when they vote for it, that's one thing. If people choose to say, I want to add $500,000 to the budget to support full-day kindergarten, the vote's been made, that's all good. But the way it's going about, think about it, we're looking at full-day kindergarten. Our buildings need significant investment for mechanical. We're looking at a fire station on the town side. There is a significant amount of money being asked of taxpayers over the next year or two. Are we going to poison the well if people feel like this was just slid in without their knowledge? Because to me, I knew about it because I follow the boards. But like you said, there's supposed to be a whole progression to how we even get there. And all of a sudden I hear, oh yeah, full-day kindergarten's in the budget. And I'm like, what? So if people don't know about it and then they find out about it, are they going to be angry enough to be not, for us to, will we be sacrificing support for future endeavors because people are upset with how this went through? So what is the danger in asking if we're so confident that the support is there? Just ask the question. The refusal to ask the question, then you're never going to be able to say people support kindergarten, because then do people support the budget because of kindergarten? Did they support it because they were worried about music or art classes being cut? Did they support it because they didn't want their sports to be affected? Why did they support the budget? But if we have a separate warrant article that's specifically for kindergarten and it passes significantly, you can with confidence say that this community supports kindergarten. But without asking the question, you can't have that confidence, and you cannot say in the future the community supports kindergarten, because you cannot prove that.
All right, if I could just get, because I know there's been some background information done in preparation for kindergarten. I know the GMS principal over the last couple of years has been gathering some data. So can I don't know if Tina or the superintendent, who's the right person to kind of give us a little background on how we got to...
Well, obviously the board was looking at full-day kindergarten 3 years ago. It was in their goals. And going forward, there's been a conversation, perhaps not captured in public agreement, but certainly there's been a conversation about trying to get full-day kindergarten into the districts, because we certainly believe that, as Chris Mastucci stated, full-day kindergarten is really integral to that early childhood education. And we believe that that is one of the most important things that we can do, one of the best expenditures of our money, in terms of not only leveling the field for all children, but also in terms of keeping kids in our core curriculum and not having them fall behind at second or third grade and have to go into additional educational experiences or into IEPs and things like that. We believe that long-term this will have a positive impact on the budget. So those conversations did occur. Did the states putting up an additional $1,100 for this coming year for full-day kindergarten, for those kids who weren't in full-day kindergarten, enter into the discussion? Absolutely. That $100,000 was a chunk of money that we took into consideration and we felt was really important to do. Did the fact that we have the capacity to reassign teachers from one place to another to come into the budget? Absolutely it did. So my desire in being a superintendent for the last few years was to keep our budget at a reasonable level coming into you folks, not coming in at a high number. So we came into you folks with a 2.8% increase year over year. And because we felt kindergarten was the highest priority for our children, we incorporated the full-day kindergarten into the operational budget. I think we are a representative democracy, not a participatory democracy. And I think what we do is we re-elect people to represent us. Those people get all of the facts and all of the information about what's going on. And then they are held accountable because they vote in the way that they believe is the right way to do it. And then the voters can vote them out or not vote them out. It's a representative democracy, not participatory. So I believe that the school board has every right and every reason to vote something they feel is the most important thing for the district to have within the operational budget and explain it to the taxpayers. And at the same time, keep the budget at an increase that's reasonable. I note the 78% increase over a number of years, and I note the 1.5% consumer price average But the 78%, is that a compounded increase over the years? I don't know how that was calculated, and I don't know. I just don't know. How does that compare?
Current year minus base year divided by base year.
How does that compare to other districts? I mean, we could keep our spending so low that we compare favorably with Franklin. I don't think we want to. I think we want to have our comparisons and our expenditures favorable to other limelight districts, top 10, top 15, top 20 districts. And I think Litchfield deserves that kind of an educational system. So I firmly believe that we had discussions about this year in and year out. We held off because we didn't have the money in our budget. And this coming year, we do believe that we can keep our budget at a reasonable place and still offer full-day kindergarten to all of our children, which I think is absolutely imperative. So that's the best I can give you for an answer.
Okay.
Well, I know you've done a lot of work on, there's a town Facebook page, a town
Yeah,
mother's page, and I've seen some of your questions that have gone out asking people for input. So there's been some awareness in the community. Could there be more?
Absolutely, and it was never the school board's intention to hide it in the budget. We've been very clear from the very beginning that this was in the budget, that this was our plan moving forward, and that this was our goal for next year. And I intend to, to keep pounding the pavement or, hitting the Facebook to get the word out. But I've done a few informal polls just on, asking parents, asking people on Facebook, just kind of, where are you, what are your thoughts? And overwhelmingly, there is support for full-day kindergarten in our town. I know that that's, I'm not Price Waterhouse, I'm not, a Gallup poll by any means, but the need is there, the desire is there, and the board agrees that this is imperative for our kids.
Just if I could build on one of them. The very first presentation that we did publicly to the board, full-day kindergarten was listed as a top priority. And the very first presentation we did to this board, full-day kindergarten was listed as the top priority. So, I mean, it happened rather quickly, but I think it was very clear. We communicated to the public, so once we knew, in our minds, we had the financial capacity to go forward with the full-day.
So, going back to his presentation, when the next to the bottom bullet states that the school board intended to put forth as a warrant article for approval. Between that point and now, what changed in the philosophy? Why did we decide to move from, yes, we're going to ask, to, no, you're either going to vote the budget up or down, we haven't helped anything else in the budget?
You'll have to ask the board that question. That's really not me to answer that question. It's not fair for me to answer for the board. I think that I would say that opportunity existed this year that didn't exist 3 years ago. That would be my quick summary of what was going on.
Yeah, the discussion last night at the board, the board voted in favor of keeping it in the budget, and the reasoning is that that's our job. Our job is to improve education in Litchfield and to provide our students with the best education possible and every opportunity. And so that's our job. Your job might be, as you are open about it, your job is to keep the taxes at a level base. Our job is to educate the kids and to do what needs to be done to get our kids the best education they can have.
No, and I understand and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But at one point, the school board said, we're going to put it forth as a warrant.
Right.
And now the school board changed their mind.
Well, I think that
is
was
it just because we have a different school board, we decided to chuck everything out the window?
Well, I think that was what explained when the superintendent said the opportunity presented itself in a different way than 3 years ago.
It's still going to cost the same amount regardless of whether it's, $100 grand on 500 grand is chump change, really. So it's really, it's not.
It's more of a
I'll take it, me too. We'll split it, go.
What's the long-term cost associated with that? It's 500 grand now. What's it going to cost in 5 to 10 years? Pensions, healthcare, and all this other stuff.
All right, so let's get going with the rest of the agenda, because obviously that's going to be a piece of what comes up. Any other member input, miscellaneous business that anybody wants to bring up?
I had a question regarding the IT budget. I think I'd seen that there was an intention to roll out one-to-one and outfit all LMS students with Chromebooks, but I didn't see that clearly in the budget, so I'm curious as to where that would be.
Do you want to respond to that, Jason? I think you might be the one to respond better.
I don't know, it might actually be better, Corey.
That was a piece that we had, the initial budget that came out, the superintendent and myself for review, that was one of the items that was listed as a strategic item that we pulled out of the operating budget.
Oh, so it's not in the budget?
It's not in the budget.
Okay.
Is it all LMS students?
The original, what I had heard or read was that the plan was in the budget to outfit all LMS students. So, I mean, I have concern having a future fifth grade boy who's going to throw his backpack as to whether or not that's a good idea. But where it was in the budget, because I didn't see it, and the concern is.
It's on the, if you look at the strategic items, the 2018 strategic items that are listed out, it is on there, the LMS.
All right. So, but it's not, there's no funding set aside for it currently?
We would address, be one of the items that we would prioritize to address out of year-end fund balance.
So we would expand a program without voter input out of year funding, putting people on the hook for here on out, non-year funds.
I think that we would expand the program if we felt that gave our children the best possible advantage when they get out of here. And I believe that anyone who believes that every child shouldn't be fully facile with computers as early as possible just doesn't, to be quite candid, understand where the educational community is. You're in the private sector. I'm sure you use computers every day. We believe that having children with computers is critical, not just when they get to be high school students, but all years. We went to Bowl recently to take a look at a school up there, and an elementary school. All their children have computers. All the children in middle school, all the children in high school.
How long is that program going?
It's a tool the same as a textbook is a tool. And the computer is a tool which we use today within our curriculum. Every curriculum that we adopt has a complete segment on how to use the computer to enhance the curriculum. The teachers use that to enhance curriculum. So that it's a tool that we need in education today.
Well, again, yes, I was private sector and an engineer with a couple of engineering master's degrees, so I fully appreciate the need for computers. But I also see kids who can't talk to each other, who can't spell, whose grammar is atrocious because too much computing is introduced way too early. So there are people within the community that I've spoken to who are concerned about the incredible immersion of kids too young in a situation they don't understand when we're trying to control screen time at home. So I think that that's a conversation that needs to be had before we use adequate.
You're not at the budget committee meeting.
Because it's not in the budget, so it's a strategic item, so if this is something to go to a school board meeting.
Exactly, but I can make sure, my thing then is I would be concerned about how much end-of-year funding will be available at the end, as to whether or not they can.
And that's not what we're here to decide today.
No, but as I make proposals to the budget, I can see whether I want to be more conservative or more tight with what I think the budget should be to make sure that that kind of conversation is had.
We have a lot to get through tonight. It's already 20 minutes of 8, so I want to make sure we're sticking to what we need to talk about tonight and what not happen in the future. One question, though, that I do have is the default. I know at our last meeting, which was on the 9th, the default was being presented to the school board. I know 2 meetings have passed now that the school board has discussed it, but we haven't seen a copy of it. Where does the default stand?
So we went to the board last night with the default. They did look at it. They had some questions, asked me to go back, provide more clarification on my calculations of it in order for them to review it again before they approve it to go forward.
So there's no draft default for us to even take a look at and get a feel for ballpark?
Let me just explain a little more what Corey said, and then Corey can respond to you. I think because Corey's calculating the default budget in a much more explicit way and very differently than what's been done before, the board, when they read how the default budget was calculated, needed to have more actual explanation of the particular lines and the default budget. And I think you will find when you get it, it's a lot clearer and more concise. But the board did not feel at that point, because they had a lot of questions. We have a board meeting next Wednesday, and that should be the finalization of the default budget. You should get it in your hands by the end of the day, or by Thursday, I would assume. The second question you had, some kind of an idea with the default budget. I don't know if you're prepared to go down that road at all. I don't want to put a number out here.
The fact that it's been discussed at 2 public school board meetings means it's public information, so I am disappointed that we don't even at least have a draft to give us an idea, understanding that numbers change right up until the ballot is written. So I feel like we're missing a big piece of information that we need to make our decisions and make good decisions.
Corey can share, obviously.
Based on the calculations that I've done, the default budget is within $100,000 of the proposed.
It's $100,000 less than the
Yep.
proposed budget at this point in time.
Okay.
And we will get that to you, and I apologize that we didn't get that to you already.
Thank you. All right, we do have 2 sets of minutes. We have November 2nd and November 9th. Have people had an opportunity to take a look at them, and are we ready to vote on them?
Second, not the 9th.
Yeah, second and not interested.
So I'd make a motion to approve the November 2nd ones.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving November 2nd's minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, so the November 2nd, we'll hold off on November 9th. Correspondence, we did have quite a bit of information that was filtered through everybody, from the teacher's contract to, gosh, I don't even think I could say it off the top of my head. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see.
Just warrant articles.
Warrant articles, technology plan, district goals, class enrollments at LMS and CHS, superintendent salary comparison, what districts we use to compare, a copy of the teacher's contract, 6 period classes at CHS, the guidance counselor loads at CHS, the textbook spend ahead, the curriculum review schedule, and textbook replacement.
So we all had that information forwarded to us. We also had, there was a legal opinion. Kerry raised the question earlier about the petition warrant articles from 2003. I did get a response today from legal counsel. Basically, petition warrant articles, voters cannot take away legal responsibilities from that have already been described by law. So by law, the selectmen and the school board are the ones that create warrant articles. So the voters cannot change the law and change the responsibility of school board members or selectmen. And that it was actually an advisory warrant article based on the wording which is contained, that was contained in that warrant article. So that was a legal opinion we got today. And then the other thing we got from the town side, there was a change in healthcare in the library budget, so there was an addition to the library budget. And when we do the town, we will take that up on the 7th. So that was, we had a lot of correspondence well, we were gone for a couple of weeks, so that's why too. Budget review, the school district budget. One of the, we wanted to keep it big picture. We wanted to keep it not so much picking, line by line and making, 5-cent reductions, $10 reductions. So one of the things that I had done at our last meeting that I sent out at the end of the last meeting and actually sent an updated copy based on, there were a couple of small changes that the school district made, so based on those couple of small changes, which really shouldn't affect greatly any notes you've come with tonight. But we're doing it in the format of the MS-27, which is what gets submitted to the state, which is basically our function lines, using our function lines, and that's where the MS-27 comes from. So that is how I want to proceed, is using the format of the MS-27, which is that document that was put on the shared site, so that everybody could at least see what it looked like. I want to try to get an idea of where people stand, a big picture idea, and so I'll throw out where I ended up. Yes?
I hesitate to interrupt, but if I might. Like Corey stated, the default budget is $100,000 less than our budget. However, we recently got some more information about revenues, that we feel we should share with you prior to our conversation. Now that's close to share that information about revenues.
This would be a good place to do it then, because before we get to voting, it'd be nice to know.
I want to share it with you right now before you get into your discussions.
So I can provide the document as well. The FY19 adequacy aid funding numbers, their estimates for FY19 came in. They're projecting us to, we'll be losing about $295,000 in state revenue for FY19. That's what the projection is right now. So obviously that will have an impact on.
And that's due to the October 1 ADM numbers that they're projecting. They're projecting that we will have 55 fewer students in the district than we have this past October, and at times $3,500 plus other loss in revenues. We thought you should know that before you start your defense.
Okay. So that's pretty significant.
Yes, it is.
That's pretty significant. All right, so basically, when I ran through the budget, I was looking for, without touching programs, without touching projects, I simply looked at history. And based on looking at history, I was able to come up with a little over $281,000 in reductions. So I want to kind of get a feel of where everybody else fell in terms of what they feel are reductions, or additions, I suppose, as they went through their budget deliberations. So if anybody wants to jump in with where they sit.
I was significantly higher than that.
Me too.
We clearly have a difference of opinion on kindergarten, but I was close to $1 million. That could be cut.
I was pretty close too.
Okay. Anybody else want to offer up ballpark of where they fall out?
I was closer to Dennis than to your number.
Like I said, I was simply looking at history. I did not touch programs. I did not touch projects. I did not touch...
Now, to be fair, there were some lines I did want to add to, but the overall was a negative.
All right. Nobody wants to share their ideas. That's okay. So where do you want to proceed?
Might as well go to the elephant.
Go to the elephant.
I'll make a motion to reduce the regular programs by $494,091.
Second.
Can you repeat that?
Regular programs, $494,091.
I assume that's kindergarten.
That's all of kindergarten based on the numbers that were presented to the budget committee. Under the rationale, if there's huge community support, the warrant will pass. The second being, the school board had it as a goal to go on the warrant. I think we should honor their goal. If they've done the work, we can put it on the warrant. It's an opportunity for the people to vote, and you get a clear direction one way or the other.
I think, too, it sets a good tone as we start going to be putting out, whether we do a bond or we add to this for investing in the buildings. As we start looking at all the other investments this town needs to make into the school system and into the town buildings. And then you don't want to say, well, why'd you ask for everything else but not that? So I think just keep the open communications. It creates goodwill. There's nothing wrong with, I'd rather ask too much than not enough. I mean, Lord knows, look at the old ballots. They used to have 25 questions on it. So we used to ask everything. And I think something this big ought to be asked.
And I think, just my personal opinion, I won't say what I believe the rest of the board will do. If it comes forward as a warrant article, I'll support it. I know the value. I was on the school board. I just believe when you're going to expand a program by that amount, that's going to continue in perpetuity, because there's no way you're ever going to come back and reduce kindergarten to half-day. It's just not going to happen. The voters have a right to vote on it, and I believe they'll support it. And in the end, the school board will get exactly what they wanted with a mandate to spend the money, and nobody can say, oh, they snuck it in.
Exactly. And to be fair, my son does attend full-day kindergarten also, so I support the idea. I just would like it put in correctly. I would like us not to have, we all want what's best for the kids, and realistically, community support is necessary for a successful school system. We already have programs in the school that were started with a bitter taste in some people's minds, and some people in this town have a very long memory. And I think the kindergarten program deserves to be started on the right foot, because if we start on the wrong foot, it's going to take a long time for people to forgive us. So let's ask the question, get it through, people will support it, but they want to be asked. I mean, clearly, even if it's not a binding warrant article, it was 2-1. People want to be asked these questions.
I guess the other, I'm sorry, Cindy, if you just, one thing. The other piece to it, the warrant article was pretty clear. New positions, you can argue whether it's a new position. New equipment, there's a significant amount of new equipment needed for kindergarten.
Architectural, they need new buildings.
We need buildings, there's computers, there's everything that needs to go into those classrooms for full-time kindergarten that's inside the budget. This says we should put it on a warrant article. And I will say there's at least 5 members of this committee sitting here last year that had a chance to ignore the tax cap article and chose not to do it because the voters said that's the way they wanted it. So I would look for consistency to say, this is what the voters have asked for, this is what we should do. And the second warrant article that's petitioned, I don't believe even comes into play, because it talks about those positions needed to meet minimum state and federal standards or to maintain services. Neither of those 3 apply to kindergarten, because we're clearly going to maintain half-day, we're looking to go higher, and it's not positions to maintain that, we're trying to expand it. So I just look for a little bit of consistency.
Any further comment?
Voters should be asked, this is a large recurring expenditure. I think that however we feel about kindergarten should be exclusive from this issue. Our job as a budget committee is to recommend the budget to the voters. So we should really set personal feelings aside. It's strictly a financial decision.
So I agree with Jim. I don't agree with all of the arguments that have been put forth today by any stretch of the imagination. I certainly don't agree with the member of the community that called out 5 members of the board.
Say me.
I rarely agree with you.
I know, that's why I expected it.
I thought we should know you a few years ago.
I'm just happy to sit next to me now, Jim.
Love you like a third cousin.
That's dangerous.
I do believe that this, and Mr. O'Neill, I think you made a really good point that made it very hard for me to come to this place, but this is, we were voted here for a reason. I was voted here to represent the people of this town, and I think the people of this town want and have a right to make this decision, and I think overwhelmingly I will 100% support it, and I will be all over Facebook.
Any other comments?
May I ask a clarifying question? The budget committee can cut the budget, but it can't direct the board in terms of putting in a warrant article.
Correct.
That's correct.
I'm just suggesting, if the board brought it back,
We would support it 1,000%. I would support it 1,000%.
I think it would pass the budget
Clear in
committee.
my mind. Thank you.
Yeah, it's strictly process.
Thank you.
I thought long and hard about this because, and one of that second petition warrant article, the 2004 warrant article, was state standards, federal standards. And so I was actually struggling with one of the things we've adopted are our state has standards, and there is kindergarten standards, and I actually did some research, and in order to meet those standards, it's possible to meet it with 3 hours a day, but it really means 6 hours a day. So in my head, I'm like, all right, does that qualify as a standard that we're trying to meet, and we should then keep it in the budget? A little aside, we don't always follow every directive, because one of the other warrant articles that same year was somebody who was disgruntled over the school board policy to lower class sizes to 20. And that passed overwhelmingly to keep them at 25. And we have never, in the 13 years since, followed that directive. So we can't say we want to follow every directive that the community makes if we choose to ignore other directives, as we have. So it really is information we take under advisement, that the school district and the town take under advisement, and it's a piece of what they weigh. I went round and round with this, and I don't have a problem, decided I don't have a problem either way. With it being out of the budget, I understand the opportunity of leaving it in the budget, but I personally don't have a problem either way with where it goes, because it is something I will support however it comes forward to the town.
This one, for me, actually, is tough. I actually had to think more and bring out all my crayons for this one.
The 64 box?
Yep. I had to get to magenta. decision. My part here is I'm a big advocate of education. I've been a benefit of great teachers. My children have benefited great teachers in this town. I moved to this town because of the education system, plain and simple. I make no qualms about it. This one, again, was hard because I have a hard time telling the school district and the professionals what you need and what you don't need. But I do look at it from a tax point of view also. And again, I would take the Cindy spot that I wouldn't mind it staying in or going. But I do think with everything on the line, and I think knowing the town, being here long enough, I think that it would be something that would pass. I don't believe in those types of things. It's just my own opinion. You can put graphs and charts and all that other, and I can put a couple numbers and sway it every way, so. But that being said, I mean, I think it's something that should go to the voters overall. And again, tough choice to do that. But I think that's where I'm going to kind of stand with it.
And I think, too, the other thing that really had an impact, when Dennis went through his numbers, and I, too, asked the question of, well, what is the rest of the state trending? Because if we're all trending 76%, that's one thing. That means we all have the same economic stressors. So the state's trending at 50 and we're trending at 78. What are we doing different? What's going on? So the fact that we've gone significantly higher over the years is a factor. Hearing that we're going to lose $295,000 tonight is a factor. So I do think it's even more important to get the community's buy-in on this, because they're going to be hit with some big numbers elsewhere. And I think that's had an impact on me tonight.
Should we call the vote?
May I ask the business administrator one question?
Yes, sir.
Where $100,000 of this is from state revenues, it's not coming from local taxation. If we're cutting $494,000 and $100,000 that's revenues, is that really impacting us more than what we anticipate in terms of having to cut, or is it?
No, because it's offset.
No, because if they're pulling the total cost, the gross cost of what we have in there for kindergarten and the revenue, I mean, the revenue, obviously, we're not going to get that, but
Right.
he's pulling the gross.
Which is what we appropriate, so.
Thank you.
So shall we call it?
All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of a reduction under regular programs of $494,091, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nope.
Any abstained? Okay, so the motion passes 6-0.
Can I get that amount again?
6-1.
494091, which I think is, I took that number off
Off the sheets.
what you had passed out at the first meeting.
All right, any other places that people want to start? Special services?
You want to stay in regular?
Oh, God, regular then, yep.
I'd make a motion to reduce regular programs by $148,000.
I will second it because I'm curious.
That represents the technology spend ahead from last year into this year.
Under regular programs?
Technology's under regular programs.
Okay.
So I had a question on that. Going through it, you see a lot of lines saying funding was moved for other priorities. What were those other priorities specifically?
Which
As I look through the, especially in the technology budget, but it's also in the building and grounds budget and other things, is that what we used to fund the complete rollout of the one-to-one in the high school? Like, what was the alternative priorities that the funding was pulled away from?
Are we looking at the 18 budget? You're looking
I was looking at the 19 budget.
Okay.
There's lines throughout there. I mean, I've underlined a whole bunch of them that are saying,
Can you point me to one specifically and then?
of course, let's see if I can find one. Well, it's definitely within the technology
see the
budget.
note?
But it's within the comments. Well, so equipment replacement, what is this under? This is under district-wide technology, so in the 738 line item. Spend ahead and reallocation was to address anticipated needs in other areas.
I think that was, the
There's a
spend
whole
ahead.
bunch of those.
The spend ahead, from my recollection, a little bit before my time, was, the spend ahead was to address concerns that we had going into special ed for the following year. So the items would have been reallocated to special ed accounts. That's why a lot of the account numbers in here, a lot of the stuff that I've done based on, I explained it in the explanation of the curriculum spend ahead. So before the budget was posted into the system, instead of doing it through the budget transfer process, it was reduced in the budget module. Bottom line didn't change.
Right.
But in the budget module, there isn't necessarily an audit trail, whereas with a budget transfer, you can follow it. Where did it go? So I did spend some time trying to figure out exactly, tying out one-to-one where all these things were moved. But that is the explanation, that monies were moved into the area of special ed, to the best of my knowledge.
But didn't we have a balance of special ed at the end? Unspent funding?
Underspend?
Yeah, wasn't there not an underspend in?
Specifically for underspend in special ed?
I would just find it interesting if we have an underspend, but yet we move money into special ed, so
But we're not all the way through this year yet.
this is next year's budget.
No, we were anticipating.
We are anticipating
additional
the need in this current year that we're in right now.
So we spent ahead in
We don't know what
technology.
we're going to have left at the
Well, I
end of this
understand that, but I
year.
mean, we added a significant amount of money last year to special ed. We didn't cut the budget like we normally do, and we're still concerned about shortfalls?
There's-
Yeah.
No, I mean, we added to the budget, so it's not like we shorted you
No,
guys
but
anything.
we had information
Yeah.
regarding a potential placement that was legally necessary.
Right.
And so we spent ahead from the technology budget in anticipation that we were going to have a deficit in special ed.
So we were surprised by, again, we knew of one.
Yeah.
We added $100,000 to cover that. So I'm
Right.
curious as to why we were still short a significant amount of money.
Again, special ed, you're budgeting 16, 18 months out in front of when you actually have to expend the money. Special ed is a dynamic area, it's constantly changing. And so some years, we have to put more money into it, and then take money out of it. We always return to the community money that's in the special ed. You and I can have a debate on that, but I believe that I can show you that is the case. However, last year, at the end of the year, my recollection was, the previous business administrator had indicated to us that we had a very, very small amount of money left in special ed. And when we recalculated that, we had more money than what we actually thought we had. We returned all of it. So I just want you to know, that's the best I can give you. And I just want to, this is kind of, I would say, a very different conversation we're having right now. It's kind of, Pembroke, I think we've read about recently. And they were $1.7 million short in their budget because the budget wasn't funded to the appropriate amount. I would ask the budget committee, please fund us the appropriate amount. Our default budget is only $100,000 less than our regular budget. And I realize that we've removed 2 positions and other things right now. But I would ask the budget committee, where they've taken $500,000 out of our budget, which was for kindergarten, and asked, up to the board, if they want to still run kindergarten and cut $500,000, which I don't think is possible. I'll put it into a warrant article or ignore the need for full-time kindergarten. I would ask the board to please be very considerate of how much money we need to run the district. So I want to ask. Thank you very much for your time.
What was the total underspend for last year?
Off the top of my
Is
head.
it like $500,000?
About that.
So we had a similar conversation last year where we were overcutting and not providing you with enough money to run the school, and yet you still end up with $500,000 underspend. So to me, it's kind of insulting to indicate that we are shorting the students when we end up with a significant underspend. I don't think anybody on this board committee is trying to cut so far down that there's an inability to adequately educate our children. I think we're trying to be realistic about what it costs,
Carrie,
and we can
if-
disagree about what that it costs.
If we have that much of an underspend, though, what happens to that money? It goes back.
Some of it, and some of it gets spent for other purposes. We ended
that's
up with
what
a
I'm
new
trying
track
to
one year.
address here.
And we ended up with full one-to-one rollout 2 years in advance of the Campbell High School. So not all of the money does get returned to the taxpayers. A lot of it gets spent on other projects that wouldn't necessarily make it through the budget committee process.
So I can tell you, to Carrie's point, another piece of analysis I did, which is the budget request versus the spend from the previous year, 2017 to 2018. While the budget may have only been up by X dollars, when you look at the budget to the budget, when you look at the spend of the budget, it's up $1 million. So they have $1 million more dollars in 2018 than they spent in 2017. And it's, I would estimate it's going to be a similar number at the end of 2018 going into 2019 unless we take action for that.
I would just...
No, I understand that's your job.
Yeah, I pulled this is where I pulled all the numbers from off the audit statement, and then there's not an audit statement for 2017, but there's Corey's report.
Just like to understand. I'm not challenging, I'd like to understand.
And it's the total expenditure, not just the general budget. So food service and grants and everything is all lumped inside of that number.
And Dennis, would you share that with the whole committee?
Yeah.
And so that Michelle can also make sure it gets in the minutes?
No, it was a tad over $1 million. I have it all the way back through 2007.
So I don't think anybody wants to hurt education. We just want to make sure that we actually reflect what the actual costs are. And when we end up with a significant underspend, to me that means we're not being conservative enough in our budgeting. We are not. We're being overly conservative in providing too much money.
So
I'm not
let's,
going to encourage you to spend, but I think that
so
just
let's
means that.
stick with the motion on the table,
No.
which is
Yes, please.
$148,000 for technology.
So if the money's been reallocated to special ed, it hasn't all been reallocated because the budget was $320,813 and we spent $227. And we spent ahead $148,000. So there's $90,000 out of that 148 if it got reallocated, that's left. And that assumes we don't spend another dime in technology for the rest of 2018, which is probably overly optimistic, I would guess. And this is, I believe, the third year in a row where there's been a technology spend ahead at the end of the year, which was why I asked for the plan. What's the technology plan for the district? And thank you for sending what the replacement plan was, but it doesn't tell me where the district is trying to go overall with technology. It's telling me I think I need to replace $100,000 worth of equipment this year and $50,000 or $300,000 the next year. But looking at just the numbers, it doesn't tell me what we're trying to accomplish and where we want to get.
I think Jason's here, and I'm sure he would be more than happy to speak to the...
But I mean, it's the board that needs to set
I guess I don't know
those
what additional information you're looking for. We've said that we want to have one-to-one technology at LMS and CHS, and we want to have a hybrid model at GMS.
So
we're outfitting.
what are the costs of laying that out? You lay that out in a plan, whether it's a 1 or 3 or 5 year plan.
It's in
that
the
says-
plan.
It's just, I think one of the problems that I think Jason brought to the board publicly last night was that he's actually going to spend less money because technology costs have come down a great deal. So it's hard to lay out a plan more than 2 or 3 years.
I agree.
They have to be redone every year in order to be really true to what you're doing.
Which is exactly what I would expect
That's
to
what
happen.
Jason did this year, was he took a look at his purchase plan and he readjusted that, and that was what the board passed last night, was with the readjusted plan. Am I correct in saying that the readjusted plan is actually less in terms of its projected expenditures than the original plan last year?
The replacement?
So if we could,
The replacement plan? The replacement plan? So I get the replacement plan, and that's great that we have that.
yeah, can we stick with what your motion
so I'm
is, which
what I'm-
you're trying to reduce, and your rationale is the spend ahead from this past year?
Correct.
So can we
Yes.
stick with that?
Yes, because
Because that really kind of has nothing to do with the
well, I
plan.
mean, if I would have seen a plan that says we want to accomplish these 8 things, here's what we expect them to cost, and here's why this money's in the budget, that makes not making this motion easier, but
Right, that makes sense, because that's what I did. I looked at the plan, I left the plan funded, but there's 20, without kindergarten, because I had subtracted the kindergarten, without kindergarten, there is equipment additional, 27,274, and that was on my reduction list, because I'm going to fully fund the plan, but these extras, those are the things that should be in the strategic plan at the end of the year. So my reduction was not because of a spend ahead and it pissed me off, which it did the last couple of years, but I did it more deliberately and said, I'm going to fully fund the plan, But this extra piece that's in there, I'm gonna take that out, and we've been able to spend ahead, so I'm gonna assume that's gonna happen. So based on the 148, I'm not in favor of that,
Make an amendment.
but I have another rationale.
Please, make an amendment.
Any other,
No, personally, I'm comfortable with it. It's just, if there's something that they feel they can't spend, or they can't afford within the budget, that's something to expand a program. There's a process to get it back in the budget. So I think, like I said, the bottom line budget, my number was, for proposed reduction was pretty big, so, I mean, and my actual technology reduction was even higher, so I'm willing with the 141.
and the reason I'm
48,
not,
it's still lower than what my note says.
the reason I'm not going to amend it is because I actually had it under a different line. And it's under other programs is where it came out of the 2225, so that's why instructional staff services. So that's why I'm not going to amend it, because I want to make sure that we're pulling it out of where we're going to have it on the MS-27, so we'll just vote on this then. So there's a motion to reduce $148,000 out of technology under regular programs. So if there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No. All those abstain. So the motion fails, and that is 2 through 5, 0. All right, so while we're on this topic, I would like to make a motion to reduce from instructional staff services, which is 2,200 and to 2299, the amount of $27,274.
Second?
Made and seconded, and again.
27,274.
27,274. And again, my rationale was I wanted to fully fund the technology plan. This is something that was in addition to the technology plan, so then I feel that the appropriate place for that is at the end of the year as part of the strategic plan when there's a little bit extra.
I apologize. What line were you taking that from?
It's called equipment additional.
Okay.
Because I was able, based on the technology plan, I was able to find all of those costs in there. But it was the kindergarten computers and this additional equipment, the one-to-one Chromebook initiative, incoming freshmen, 115 Chromebooks. That seemed to be outside of the technology plan, so that's why.
Did we already cut that with the reduction in regular programs for full day K? If those computers are...
There is a separate cost for that. So that's why I'm saying I actually had the two pieces in there.
Oh, okay.
This is only the one piece is left because the kindergarten piece has already been taken out.
Okay.
So it's just 27 instead of the original 56 that I had.
I was just asking our IT director if he wanted to add anything to the dialogue.
All I would say is she's right that the one-to-one and the kindergarten is outside the scope of the one-to-one replacement plan. The new initiatives are in the building budget, so this is the 225 line, so regular programs, and the replacement plan is in one of the
Yeah, support services or instructional staff services. Any further discussion?
If that was added to that would be added to a warrant article, if so decided?
If they could, if they wanted to.
So I was going to also reduce the kindergarten piece anyways, so that's already part of Dennis's. This is something that I feel is outside of their technology plan, that at the end of the school year, when they look at any unexpended funds that are left over, that this is where they would make one of those strategic purchases.
Okay, so this is, I guess, the money, what's a practical application of this money? I'm not sure I understand that. So if we're looking at how many Chromebooks or...
For the financial plan, that's like business as usual. So items that we currently have, so servers, computers, IT infrastructure overall in the district. So just the cost of doing business year by year. The other, like the one-to-one, the initiatives and everything, those are put in the into the building
Yep.
technology budget.
So what's the practical application of this $27,000? What's the impact to you?
The 27,000 for
The reduction.
kindergarten?
No, this is incoming freshman one-to-one Chromebook initiative, 115 Chromebooks with management software at $225 each, instructional hardware like Chromecasts.
And that's at CHS?
Yep.
If we did not fund that, that means that the new incoming freshmen would not have Chromebooks.
Or it means they would have to find
The money
the
elsewhere.
funds elsewhere.
You
Perhaps
just found
spending money that
funds.
was spent ahead.
And again, I did that because I want to fully support technology, but the last 2 years, they've spent ahead $300,000 one year, $148,000 this past year. So I know there's an ability and an interest in purchasing some of these things ahead, at the end of the year, out of end of year available funds.
Yep. The fallout funds, same thing. Understand the principle, but by saying this, are we saying that we don't agree with the budget as proposed?
Nope, we're not saying we don't agree with Chromebooks for freshmen. We're saying this isn't the appropriate place to fund that.
Okay.
Because I am quite certain they will still find a way to fund Chromebooks for freshmen.
We managed to fund several classes last year, so one class should be doable. Because we were gonna roll it out one class a year until we were fully
Well, I
done.
understand-
So it was supposed to be done in 2 years, and now we're done now. So they were able to fully fund classes 2 years ahead, so they should be able to fund a class. So that's actually 3 years. They bought 3 years worth of classes.
We also just cut $500,000 from their budget.
Well, for a purpose, they can go back
Cut
on.
it from the budget.
But
Cut
I
additional
will
spending.
remind, I'd like to remind the committee that, yes, in the past, we've, we still have a default that's only 100,000 less than our proposed, so.
Well, the default is that
consider it
maintaining
at that.
current levels of staffing too, though, right? So does the default reflect the reduction of the teachers we don't need? So then the default could be a little higher than it needs to be actually be a default.
No, default
I know what the legal meaning of a default is, but if we're still not going to fully fund, if we could fully fund those positions and still remove them, that frees up money to be used elsewhere. So,
Yeah,
we're going to adjust staffing levels. We're going to take the money that's set aside for it by default and use it for something else. So the default budget, while within the legal means, is higher than what we need for an actual default.
Right. All right, so if we could,
Let me just mention one thing. I believe that our fund balance 2 years ago was significantly higher than our fund balance this past year. And what the Budget Committee has been saying to us year to year is to keep reducing your fund balance. And I believe you'll find that next year the fund balance will be reduced again. I would just ask us to, look at the trend line. I think the trend line is going in the direction we want it now. And I wouldn't assume that we're going to have the same kind of money in fund balance in future years based on the trend line. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
all right, so the motion is a reduction of, I gotta find that line again, $27,274, which is from instructional staff services. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. And abstain. Okay, the motion fails.
Is it a tie, 4-4?
3-4 fails.
Oh, it's 3-4.
3-4, yeah.
No, it can't be 3-4, there's 8 of you.
No?
There's 7 of
Seven
us.
of us.
John's not.
You're doing great. You can't vote.
Julie Green. That's right. Sorry.
Is that coming from after doing it?
I'm tired, I'm very tired.
Half of it.
Early and often.
All right. Who's up?
I'll make a motion in, I can never remember what it is. Regular programs to reduce the superintendent's salary by $15,000.
Second. Go ahead.
Okay, that is actually in
That's in
2320
Okay,
SAU
sorry.
Management
Okay,
Services.
so that's the location, thank you.
A reduction by 15,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Rationale?
So I looked at the data.
Did you second?
Okay.
I will second things for discussion. If he wants to talk about it, he should be allowed to.
Okay.
So I looked at the data the school district sent, and when you factor Litchfield out, it's $125,000. But I believe because the current superintendent is part-time, we're not paying benefits, healthcare and such, which is going to factor into that. So to come in with a salary of $135,000, which puts us well over the state average, as well as the districts that we're sized with, just seemed a bit excessive to me.
But is there currently money in the benefits line item for that position? Yes, there is.
They budget, whatever, they follow the same methodology.
Right, because they assume there's going to be a replacement.
Yeah, two-person.
May I?
Go ahead.
Comment on that? I just want to point out that there are many districts in New Hampshire and Massachusetts that we are competing with for superintendents, and we would a reduction in that salary makes us less appealing to those highly qualified superintendents. And I think it would be a disservice to have to cut that salary. And
The district is free to pay whatever they want. You can pay $170,000 if you want to hire somebody at $170,000. I'm just saying for a budgetary number, I think for our district size and the people we're competing with, $120,000 with another $30,000 in benefits is not a bad salary.
Oh, I disagree.
So I looked at the data that we were provided with of the districts that they used as to come up with that salary. And when you look at what was provided to us, the average salary was $125,647. The 82 full-time superintendents in the state of New Hampshire is $126,936. But when I looked at the 10 districts, and of course, we're one of them, so I took us out because I don't think we should be calculating ourselves into that mix. I also took out Hillsborough Deering because they skew it very high, 146, which is much higher, quite significantly higher than any other district. And there were 2 districts that were at 115, so I threw out the high and I threw out one of the lows. And threw out Litchfield because we should be comparing ourselves. And I came out with an average of 123,218. So I think Dennis's reduction, you said you're going from 135 to 120. So I was going to propose a $10,000 reduction because I do think a reduction is appropriate. And that still puts us in the average. So we're still in good standing with the other districts we're competing with. So I will make a motion to amend that to $10,000 instead of $15,000.
Well, I mean, but
Chair, can I?
his amount would also factor in social.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been seconded. Corey?
I'd just like to make a comment. When we think about, so it's budgeted at the 135 range, and then you also have the 2-person insurance. If someone comes in, someone's young, they have a family, they take a family plan. So that's a $10,000 additional that's going to go to the health. So there could be a swing in there anyway. You hire them at 125, but now they've got a family plan, and that goes up 10,000. There's your 10,000. It still leaves us the room, and we're within the budget. That would be my one concern. You could get someone that comes in and takes a single plan. You just never know when someone comes in. And I think if you want to attract, true, and if you want to attract someone right now that's going to be here for 5-10 years, hopefully, someone that comes in with a vision and goes forward, we're going to have to pay to attract that person. We're going to have to offer enough to attract that person. As Dennis said, we can pay them what we choose to pay them. However, if it's not in the budget, it will limit what we are able to offer in the end. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, Dennis, did you have a comment?
No, I was going to say that they could come in and take the waiver, and we could pay them $135,000 too.
So this is not going to impact what we can pay the superintendent because that ad has already gone out with the range on it. There's already applicants. That's going to happen within the next couple of months. So it's not going to impact what we offer the superintendent. Whatever we offer them, we're going to have to figure out in next year's budget how to make do. So if it's 5,000, if it's 10,000, or if we get a bargain at 115 because there's several districts, there's at least 2 districts that have superintendents at 115 because maybe they are young, well then we bump up the 10,000 in benefits, and we're at the budgeted number anyway. So, yeah, who knows what's going to be next year, but that's going to happen right now. It's not going to impact our ability to bring in a good quality superintendent today.
I find it interesting we actually advertise a range for a position. It's just odd that you could have someone come in that's barely qualified now, because you've advertised, you're going to pay them the minimum that you did, versus maybe, to Cindy's point, you might get somebody for 115.
But this is a budgeted number.
Yeah.
Correct.
So, do we know how many I'm sorry.
I'm looking for recognition, you're on the committee. You get to speak before me.
Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Do you know how many superintendent openings there are in
Should we
Southern
say
Hampshire?
17? 10 in New Hampshire, an additional,
One's been filled.
an additional 7 in Massachusetts, I think.
And there were 2 more this past week in Massachusetts, one in Newburyport, I don't remember the other one. I think there are probably a dozen in Massachusetts, which are in commuting range of Litchfield.
Yeah, but they have an income tax, so.
They generally
Also
offer
pay
higher
us,
salaries,
yeah.
but they also have an income tax, so I think.
And if income tax isn't deductible anymore, then it's less attractive.
But it's still a very small pool of
Retirement system that
applicants.
is up to 80% of their
Right.
best 3-year salaries, and they also have opportunities when they leave to increase that. So their retirement system is much more favorable than the New Hampshire retirement system.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment if I could.
Yeah.
I don't care, I do care deeply about where you set the salary. I am concerned that we keep using the term average to hire a new superintendent. I don't want to leave this as an average district with average superintendent. I want to leave this district as an outstanding district who has an outstanding superintendent. And it may not be that you can pay the average for outstanding when there are 10 other districts competing against you. My only comment. Thank you.
So,
Go ahead, Jen.
I would just say, from my perspective, hiring in both New Hampshire and Massachusetts, 10 openings, I want to make sure that we're competitive. I would be very concerned. You know, I would rather have that money there than have to lowball someone. And I get the idea that if we have a good candidate, we're going to pay them, but I don't know, this is an area where I feel like
I would say for a budget number, $135,000 is reasonable. I don't see any reason to reduce it. I'm not sure if it really benefits us. It's, in our job as a budget committee.
We are looking at, even if the budget was level funded, that $295,000 loss in revenue is going to be a big hit on taxes. So that makes, I think, our job a lot harder. So we have to look for the small.
That's like a quarter on the tax rate by itself.
Yeah, so we have to look for even the small places we can make reductions. And I think the numbers, based on the numbers supplied to us, that fully, it's above the average. 125 will be above what the average is. So it's not, we're not going for the average. And we already have all the applicants, it's closed. So we have all the applicants now. So it's not going to impact our ability to hire anybody now. This is just, like you said, budgeting for next year.
But you're assuming that one of the applicants is actually going
Did
to...
we receive?
I mean, we go through this exercise every time we have to budget for a teacher. We budget a middle-of-the-road teacher, salary-wise.
Standard
and
personnel
salary.
costs.
So that's all I'm trying to do is say here, I don't know why we want to budget 10,000 above the state average for salary.
Realistically, it's
That's
not,
what I'm stuck with.
well, like you're saying, it's a numbers thing, right? It's not at all emotional. I understand that, we have our personal desires and hopes, but you have to put a number on everything. So, it's just, it's not personal. It's not that we think that the person who receives 115 ain't going to do any less of a job. Because quite frankly, if a person doing 115 would only do better because he got paid 125, well then maybe we shouldn't have hired him to begin with. I want his best no matter what he gets paid. And if they agree to take the job at whatever he's offered, I hope they bring their A game. So.
But we're recommending a budget to the voters.
So.
Okay, so if we say $135,000, that covers a wide range.
Yeah.
Covers a fairly wide range. If we come in under that, at the average, that money still gets returned to the voters, or something else.
So here's a suggestion. This person if the schedule holds, will be brought on for deliberative session, or the offer will be made, and we'll know. So,
We could adjust the
we
line.
can revisit it at deliberative session. And I forget whether the school is the 3rd or the 10th.
School's the 10th.
Thanks,
School's the
Michelle.
10th.
Extra time.
So, this is certainly something that could be revisited. If we find that we've either stayed at 135 and it's too much, or we've gone to 125 and that's not enough. We have deliberative session to make changes. And even by the hearing, by January 11th, I don't know, we won't be that far along in the process. We won't be that far along in the process. So, there's a motion on the table. Actually, there is an amended motion on the table. So, if there's no further discussion, we will vote on the amended motion, which is a reduction of $10,000 in the superintendent's salary. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Aye. So the motion fails 3-5-0. 4. Excuse me, yeah. So we are back to the main motion, which is a $15,000 reduction. Is there any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor of a $15,000 reduction in the superintendent's budgeted salary, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstained? The motion fails 3-4-0. Okay, any other motions?
Let's see, so what does GMS fall under? I didn't do it in that function.
Depends.
It depends.
Co-curricular transportation, a reduction of 2,800.
Co-curricular transportation, so that is, I believe that's other programs. 'Cause I think I took that, a similar reduction, and I believe it's
Because I didn't put together all of my things. I went to the bottom line per
Transportation?
tab.
co-curricular
It's
transportation.
in the 2,700 counts.
I went by tabs, I didn't do the other one, sorry.
It's in the 2,700.
I have no idea.
Oh,
It's the 519 transportation, the co-curricular, in particular, the field trips,
and how much is your reduction?
the 2,800.
2,800? Is there a second? I'll second for discussion.
We've added the funding for the 3 field trips. The explanation is that it's expensive to, what am I saying? Costs are quite high for these field trips, but if you break it out per kid, it's about $10 a trip, a kid for the field trip. And I appreciate the attempt, but given that we're losing $295,000 and all the other things we're looking forward, I don't think it's too much to ask a parent to fund the $10 for the bus ride for their kids' field trips.
Any further discussion?
I believe, Scott, maybe you can speak on this, but I believe that parents already pay a portion of field trips. This is just an additional help to defray the cost of the field trip. So field trips are not free. Parents currently pay about $10 to $15. Some are up.
Because there's also an admission charge.
Right.
So this is just to help with transportation.
I appreciate that. Parents have been paying for full day at kindergarten, we can, it's just to me, $295,000, we have to look for reductions to bring this back in, and we've never funded this before, based on, I've looked in the past ones, these are new line items, it just level funds, yeah, it level funds what we've done before.
What was your amount again, Carrie?
2,800.
2,800.
And then some.
The Squam Lake, the Museum of Science, and
Under GMS.
I mean, I went back through the other ones I have. These are new line items. If you look at what we've spent in the past, we haven't spent them. It's a new addition, which, again, is fine if that's what we want to do. There's a process in place for that. I just don't think that is the appropriate way to add it.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just as a general principle, I believe that if a program is integral to the education of the children, and if the program has been ongoing for a number of years, it is fine to have parents pay a portion of the program for the first number of years, But after it's gone on for a couple, 3 years, I think it's now integral to the educational experience of the child, and I believe that we should pay when we deem something to be integral to the educational experience of the child.
Is that a set policy by state that?
It is a set policy by the state.
So then why are we funding a portion of it and not all of it?
There are 2 laws that are specific to that, and the laws I can bring you next time.
Perfect, but
Thank you.
if we're gonna go that route, then why don't we fully fund it?
Well, I'd like to do that if you'd like to make that motion.
To me, it's an arbitrary number, so if we're gonna go that route and you wanna stake that argument, fully fund it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of $2,800 reduction, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, the motion fails 1706.
Add up to 7.
Right.
Know your facts.
My brain is trying to remember why I did something that I did. All right, any other?
Yeah, because I noticed some videos. Yeah, the smoke's
Under transportation, I will make a motion to reduce by $10,000.
Second.
This was, and I can't find my exact notes, but it has to do with we budget, assuming every one of our sports teams will make playoffs. We budget, assuming every one of our sports teams will have some pregame games. So I just took a portion of that and said, I'm going to reduce it by $10,000.
From CHS or LMS or?
It's across all of them. It's across both the middle school and the high school. And that's why I was looking for my exact, where I called it out, and I
had a similar one for reduction, but for a different reason. This year's budget includes preseason, and from what I could see in the past, we've not funded preseason.
We have. We don't always use it.
Okay, well, I don't think last year's had, or at least for referees and whatnot. So maybe it's that the officials officiating, so similar rationale associated with sporting events that we haven't always funded it 100%.
Well, so officials is completely different line item.
It's the, I will not remove it from there and offset it with Cindy's.
Yeah, it was, like I said, I just looked at,
Still associated with sports.
we assume we're going to make every playoff, we're going to go to every preseason, we'll go to some.
Yep.
And we've been going to a lot lately. But historically, we don't use all of that money, so that's why I chose that. Any further discussion?
What percentage reduction is that for 10,000?
It's very tiny.
I mean, that's like 2%.
It's
Not even
very
that.
tiny. Out of the whole transportation budget, so the whole transportation budget is $1,167,805, so it's very tiny, out of the grand scheme of things. Any further discussion? Sure.
I'm just concerned, to your point, if they do make it to, I'm just concerned that we do have that shortfall. I just don't, I think it would be uncomfortable, when the transfers from other countries to take care of that. So, and I just think, as you said, we want something.
Yeah. There might be good problems to have.
Yes, right, absolutely.
Booster club.
Yep. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of a $10,000 reduction, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No. Abstained.
It's athletic related.
Yes.
Sounded like it's. I might have had
So-
to have abstained from that.
Okay, let's try this again. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain. Okay, so the motion passes 3-2-2.
You coach 18,
Yeah,
you get paid for it,
yeah.
then you have to abstain.
3-2-2.
Is that, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, that was your role? I apologize.
We appreciate the math help. Cindy would have had it as 422. She's on 8 tonight.
I was stuck on 8 tonight. You have no idea how hard it is to calculate, to remember why I wrote this, to keep the conversation going at the same time. All right, any other motions?
I just do.
So, let's see.
That would directly affect you.
All right, I'm going to, I'm going to hit another elephant. I would like to make a motion to reduce special programs, the 1200 to 1299 series, by $166,206.
Second.
I sent out, way back, the history of what has been requested versus what's been actually spent. And we spend, we budget for the worst, as we should. We budget for every student that we have, that we know of today, and then 18 months from now, it's different. So historically, the whole 1200 series, we spend about 89% of what we budget, which means, on average, about 11% is left on the table after all is said and done. And that money goes back to the taxpayers. There is an agreement that any special education money will go back to the taxpayers.
And that amount is after reductions are usually made.
Yes.
So we initially make budget committee cuts, and then it still comes in.
It still comes in,
Because
yes.
we have 80% of the requested budget gets used, because we reduce it, which means 89% of what has been actually budgeted gets spent.
Did you make a motion and second it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So, what I did was from request. So I look at, in every budget, what's the request? So yes, we make reductions, typically we make reductions, and then after those reductions, there's still an unspent at the end of the year. But based on what the original requests are, we only spend 89%. So what the 166 represents is 5%. So that still leaves 6% above the average of what we typically spend. So I'm not trying to cut to the bone, I'm trying to make a realistic reduction that will help with what we're going to be facing for a tax increase in this budget. Through and again, I'm still stuck on that 295. That shocks me. So that's going to hurt. So I'm not doing it to hurt a program. I'm just trying to get us closer to a number that the taxpayers are going to be able to support the bigger items such as kindergarten. We've got to show them that they can afford to approve kindergarten. So that's where that number comes from. It's 5% of reduction of this the total special ed services.
And so I looked through it too, and I looked through the old, what was brought forth. Traditionally, until last year, we had taken $200,000 reductions and still came in under by quite a bit. Last year, we did not take reduction, in fact, we added. So I think this just restores back to the way we've been. There is a lot of unknown. You can have awesome years, you can have bad years. That's why we have the fund that's set aside. But even still, we have been able to, they've done an excellent job managing the budget to the point where we've never had to tap that budget. It's never affected regular education. So, yes, we budget for the worst case scenario for when this person is creating their budget, and that's how I would do it. Like, what is my worst case scenario? And it's our job to look through and say, okay, that's great, but what's the realistic scenario? And the realistic scenario is we're not going to, the 5% that Cindy presented, I think, it's a midpoint between what I had. I mean, I was potentially going significantly higher, so I think this is a very good compromise.
I, just as last year, feel like this money, gentleman's agreement, goes back to the taxpayers regardless. So I get your point, Cindy, about trying to give the voters something more presentable. This is just an area where I feel like I would be misrepresenting the people who put me here by cutting money from this budget. I just don't think that this is the place to cut.
And for me, I go home and see my little guy, so there is numbers and there's personal things, so real simply, I think there's other places that I'd be happy to chat about, but I understand your numbers and where they're cut, and I understand, your position as far as a personal part, and that's not anything, but I can't say what a phenomenal job this district does with kiddos like that. So I just think if it's used and it's held there, to me it's like an insurance policy, it goes back to the town. I understand we're looking at that number, or a purported number that's going to be there. We still don't know. That's with taking 55 kids out of the system, is that correct, Corey?
That was an ADM projection.
Yeah, okay, well, we could put 55 kids in those Page Road houses and have that number back. So, we all talk about projections, I'm just, pulling that one out, so, to me, it's a no-brainer. Again, I understand the totality of it. I'll agree to disagree with every one of you, but you're welcome to come over and see the great work that this district does with kiddos like that, so.
And I don't think anybody's arguing that, it's just that.
They do very good work, and this is not going to impact that work.
And maybe you think so, but I personally think it could. So that's part of it. And again, we can bang that ball around, but remember, I turn into a pumpkin at 9, so.
I know. And that's why I wanted to present the data a month ago, because I don't want it to be reflective of that it's harming the program or it's harming the children. This is just numbers. Dividing, subtracting, this is just numbers. And historically, over close to 10 years, we only use 89%, 90%.
So if I could just make one more comment, the district was very strong in their presentation last year that this current year that we're in was going to be different in terms of, so I'm going with the faith that is going to be the case when all is said and done at the end of this year. And so if they use the same rationale for this budget, which I believe that they did, then I feel like, again, it's going back to the taxpayer. So I would rather not be short here.
I just think that too, it makes it more, I see that you're going to propose a warrant article to increase the special ed fund. Well, if we continue to fully fund it, then we really don't need that warrant article. So I'm saying that if we're building our insurance policy into our line items, then we don't need an.
So this past, June 30th, 2017, they ended up at 91%. So they were a tiny bit above where I'm saying the average is 89. But at 91%, that still left 9% unspent. So that still doesn't even come close to what I'm proposing at 5%. So
Just question for the school. How many children in this category would it take to spend that delta?
Spent 166,000.
That could be
one.
Could be one.
One student. There's schools that cost $250,000 on average between tuition and transportation. We spend anywhere from $100,000 and $150,000 for one student, and they're not residential.
Okay, so if we have 5 kids came into the district at once, or 5 special cases, that could suck the entire delta up here?
And use the capital reserve fund that we already have.
What's that?
And use the reserve fund that we already have.
But why limit it to 5? What about 10? We have a whole new thing,
I'm just saying,
development coming in. Why?
There's $100,000 in a capital reserve fund, so if we have unanticipated students, that's to help.
Okay, but it sounds like $100,000 could get used up fairly quickly, too.
But we have a cap.
Yeah, understood.
But you have a savings account too, right?
You have a homeowner's policy, right?
Yep.
But I opt what I put into that.
Yep.
I don't tell my neighbor what they have to put into
Well,
theirs.
again, our job is to recommend the budget. It seems pragmatic to keep it where it is, considering the potential for this, any kind of that 11% to get sucked up very quickly by a very small number of people. If we don't do that, then we can tap into the reserve fund, and that might cover 1 or 2. But it's all going back to the taxpayer anyway.
Right.
maybe.
It's a strategic thing, really.
There's also
When you say maybe, what do you mean maybe? It's, I mean,
It's a
this,
gentleman's agreement. We can't hold anybody to what they're going to do, but even if, say, 5 kids did move in, there are mechanisms by which we could provide the funding for that. You call a special meeting. You're not going to go to the point where you can't service those kids. You will service those kids. It's just, do we require ourselves? No, you can call a special meeting, yes, at the expense of my cup of coffee a day. So it's just, there is a mechanism by which to provide that funding. It's whether or not we feel that we should be overtaxing in this one, but we're also overtaxing everywhere else, and that would be money that would also be available to fund it. So something's got to give somewhere. If we're going to hold special ed sacred, then we need to be willing to cut somewhere else to offset. So, I mean, otherwise, you know, at the end of the day,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
No, Cindy, your number was 166,269?
166,206.
206? That leaves $60,000 more in the special ed budget than was here this year. So it's...
no, I understand.
No, but it's presented as cutting the budget.
Which is significantly more than the previous year.
But it's based
cutting
on
the
current
increase.
enrollment and students who actually exist and need services in our district. This is, yes.
But we're budgeting for 18 months from
So
now.
we're going to spend...
So we could have...
Let Dennis talk, sorry.
So we're going to spend $1.4 million this year.
I don't know, what are you saying, there's 1.4
If it's for everybody that exists right now, if that's the budget that was put forward for 2019, that's what I thought I heard you say.
The budget that we're looking at right
Yeah.
now is for all the students who are
Everybody that's here
currently
now.
in district.
So,
Can I just address a couple of issues? I'd ask Devin to maybe weigh in on this. And I know that we have a student, we didn't want to bring it up this evening because we don't have a number for you, but we do have, we said last year, all we can give you is, in that loaf of bread, a slice of where we are right now with what we actually have in district. We do have another addition to the district who is going to be a placement. Don't know the number, we'll bring that to you next week. Last year you were very kind and you pushed $104,000 back into the budget because we had a $104,000 placement we had to put into the budget. So I would say that, you know, you've already cut, I think, about $500,000 from the original budget, which means you are now $400,000 below the fall budget, which means that $300,000 revenue shortfall, to my thinking, I'm not a numbers guy, I'm an educator, it seems like you've made a pretty good advance on that already. But I want to turn the special ed discussion over to Devin, if you would allow me to.
But while she does that, I'd like to redirect, because even though we cut the $500,000, doesn't mean that you can't put it in again as a warrant article to add it. So we're not necessarily making
For the community to make that
So let
decision.
me just, so that we're dealing with what we have in front of us, right now, with the decisions we've made tonight, we are $109,318 over last year's budget. So that's where we stand right now. So Devin, I think if you want to speak to the discussion that's happening here.
I'll just add something. I understand the discussion that's at the table, you're looking at averages and so forth. But I also want to point out that the number of individuals that we've been serving with disabilities over the years has continued to increase. To the point where right now we're serving about 235 students with educational disabilities. And we're not just talking about students with articulation disorders, we're talking about students with multiple disabilities that require a plethora of services. And I understand that, you know, last year we spent 91% of the budget or whatnot. I think it's hard to predict exactly where the budget will fall at the end of this year at this point in time. Like the superintendent has stated, I'm currently looking for a placement that was completely unanticipated. We've had a paraprofessional position completely unanticipated. So what I know to be true right this moment ends up changing even tomorrow. So I think this is just one part of the budget that I would really caution us to deal with. I understand that your job is to look at the fiscal implications, but my job in presenting the budget is looking at the needs of the students that I know about and making sure that we can adequately provide for them, and being fiscally responsible. So yes, there's been funds that have been returned to the town from special services, but it's because, you know, I'm looking at making sure we're meeting the needs of the students, but also being fiscally responsible. I'm not going out and spending money on the latest technologies for the students. Like we're doing the best we can with what we have.
I really don't think anybody's questioning the merits of what you do. I mean, obviously you're doing an outstanding job. It's just a matter, I'm looking at it from strictly a fiscal point of view. Sounds like a very small number of children could put us over the top of this budget very quickly. All right? So I think that's the only point I really want to make. I understand what you're trying to do, but if we go over this, it has to come from somewhere else.
It does. So, last year, at this same time, sitting at this table, you also had an unanticipated student moving into the district, which was where the $106,000 came from. And there was a concern with last year's budget that there was going to be a deficit in special education because of unforeseen expenses and students coming in and having to pay for those students. And yet, at the end of the year, after we all cried the sky was falling, there was $500,000
Special ed?
unexpended in special ed. $200,000.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I don't either. But there was still unexpended money after.
Special ed?
Special ed was...
My calculations in special ed is we returned about $95,000.
Yeah. Okay.
The totality of the budget was that.
$485.
And we spent how much?
Out of the spend ahead, off the top of my head.
200,000? Between technology and...
Between technology and curriculum is about 200.
But the special ed budget only had 95,000 remaining at the end of the year last year.
But you see what I'm
I
saying is, last year this exact scenario presented itself, and yet at the end of the year, we were able to spend ahead. We had almost $100,000 in unexpended funds. So I have no reason to believe that we also won't end the year making good decisions, even with unexpected students entering the district, that we will be able, within the money we have, because we only spend about 89% of it, that we'll be able to cover those students and still have an unexpended amount of money. Superintendent?
Thank you. I understand your logic. I think that when a placement can cost in excess of $150,000, that returning $91,000 is going to get pretty tight. The second thing I would ask is, as you looked at the last 3 or 4 years, was our expenditure of our budget that we budgeted increasing? Was the trend line going the direction that you wanted, which is meaning that was the budget getting closer and closer to being what we actually are expending? I don't know, I don't have those numbers. So if we spent 85% of our budget 4 years ago, and 87 to 89 to 91, it seems to me like we're doing what we said we would do.
So I looked at 16, we spent 80% of the requested budget, which is what you guys requested.
I would ask the chair to give me her numbers, because
All
those are
right.
the numbers that I'm working with.
So 76% of 17, so that it's going.
So we're getting, it varies. In 2015, we spent 92% of the request. In 2016, we spent 83.9%. This past June, we were at 91%.
What are you using as
So,
a requested number?
it varies. The requested number is what was in the budget. So before we made any reductions, before the district reallocated, because a lot of times in March, after the budget's voted in, you reallocate. And that's where the money doesn't go back to the taxpayer, because reallocation has taken as much as $150,000 out of what was budgeted for special ed to use it in other places. That money doesn't go back to the taxpayers.
And that's what I was
It's only after the reallocation does that money then, if it's not spent, go back to the taxpayers. So we really can't say that 100% of what was requested now is going to be reallocated in March and then going to be turned back in at the end of the year.
So I will say, like, procedurally wise, with the budget and the budget modules, that's something that you're not going to see, because the budget that's voted in March is the budget that's going to post into the system, the finance software, on July 1st, when we roll over the system. That's not going to change. Adjustments aren't going to be made within that budget module, so that'll be consistent. That'll be a change in process.
Okay.
So,
that's good.
Going forward, things are changing on how that's treated on our end.
There's a debate about what you're referencing. I haven't got the answer to my satisfaction.
All right.
I think going forward, the answer will be that whatever we put in the special ed stays in special ed. And I think you can be assured of that. I think Corey will assure you of that. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
So I just want to back up for a second.
Yep.
If we budgeted what we have now, currently yesterday, or I guess in September or October, whenever this was developed, we need $1.4 million this year. And there's only $1.19 million budgeted.
I know his voice, that's true.
If it was the known universe...
No, you have to consider kids that are graduating out and, is that what I'm?
So when we have students at out-of-district placements, students with disabilities have the ability to stay with us until they're 21. So even though they're on track to graduate, I still budget for their whole
And that's fine.
in case anything happens. So that, those are the...
But you're budgeting the universe as you know it now.
Yeah.
So right now, versus what was budgeted for this year, and assuming, let's be gracious and assume 100% spend. It's a $221,000 requested increase across all of special services. Cindy's asking to or made a motion to reduce that to a net $60,000 increase.
Are you saying across special services is in terms of the 1,200 function, 2,700 function?
Yeah, I believe that's what
21.
she's...
1,200.
You're
Just
looking at
1,200.
1,200.
Which is
1,200 to 1,299.
Yep.
That account.
So essentially, special ed and bilingual would be the two within that
It's
range.
$3,365,933. So again, it's 5%. All right, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor of a reduction in the 1,200 series of 166,206, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. And abstain. Okay, the motion fails, 3-4-0. Other.
I had a question regarding CHS Science. This is where I go to the opposite direction. There is a note in here that we don't have enough sets for a particular class. Is there any reason why we cannot use end-of-year funds to just provide that equipment? Because it's science, and we should not have...
I am not intimately familiar with what happened in the schools, but one of the challenges that happen in science classes right now, in one physics class, is that the tables are really complex. And what we've done is we've had the custodians actually working with our engineering students to
And I think this is totally different.
We lost one this year, and I'm not sure.
All right, maybe I'm talking about something else, because this was, you had 2 classrooms, you needed 18 kits, you have 4, you were buying 2 this year, and by 2020, we'd have enough. And I'm like, by 2020, half the kids will be graduated.
Correct, yes.
Like, why not?
It wasn't a science classroom, it was a technology classroom.
Okay, yeah.
Yep, and what had been happening is over the course of the last, I think, 4 years, they have been replacing justice and chair too. That is Mr. Donna's class, which is, he has student council kids coming in and doing projects and doing work at the same time the class is doing work. So the room, he's overgrown the room. I have another student in other rooms.
734. I just think when we're looking at end-of-year funds, just my personal preference, and I can't tell the school board what to do, but my first question, yeah, because it's right here, 6 out of 18 sets, hope to reach capacity by 2020, talking about science department, teachers have attended training and would like to implement it, need a certain number of packages. And my first question is, how are we even performing if we don't have the necessary equipment? And why would that not be one of our priorities for end-of-year funds? So, I mean, as an engineer, I would, if I'm going to spend end-of-year funds, it's going to be to provide equipment so the kids can do their classes. So, just as you guys think about it, that's one area where I know I wouldn't give you grief over. So.
No, thank you.
So, was there motion to reduce that?
No, I'm just asking as to why, like, if we have all this unexpended funds, why aren't we using it in those little areas? So, it's just something, I guess, I don't know if there's an answer,
I
but.
think the general answer to your question is when we do spend it in the prioritized areas, those specific areas perhaps weren't highlighted for us, I don't know, I can get an answer to you, but whenever we expend unexpended funds, they're in prioritized areas, that's all I can say.
It's science.
All right, I have one last motion on my list of the 1400 series other programs, which is, I'm going to make a motion to reduce $37,180.
Second.
What that is co-curricular. There are, in the agreement we have with the teachers, there are a whole bunch of co-curricular activities. Also in that agreement, the school board does not have to fill all of those positions, and in fact, there are a number of vacant positions that remain vacant. They don't run those programs. Some years, some don't get run, other years, others don't get run, some consistently don't get run. So I looked at what were vacant positions that we're currently not offering, and this is actually historical as well. And there are, in co-curricular, there's $21,845, and in athletic activities, there's $15,335, which is where I get the $37,180 total. But these are positions that are unfilled or programs that do not run.
So to me, that's a no-brainer.
Are those programs that aren't running this year, or how did you factor in history?
They haven't been running a couple of years. For example, there's a freshman basketball team. There is a JV cheerleading, and I'm not sure which season this is. Climbing wall. There's a JV track. There's a volleyball tournament. Other teacher, and these are all vacant. These haven't been run. 3-on-3 basketball.
It's a traditional cut we make every year.
These are things that, while they're called out in the teacher contract, they're not for stipends. They're not required to be offered. And in fact, we have quite a bit that aren't offered. So again, just in athletics, there's $15,000 that are currently vacant and haven't been offered in a number of years. And then I went to co-curricular, and again, pep rally. I'm not even sure what TAP is. Oh no, wait a minute. No, TAP. There's an outing club. There's an art club. There's the Granite State Challenge Club, although I know there's at least one community member that's interested in getting that up and going again. There's a literary club. So these are, and that at the high school is $7,000 and at the middle school is $4,000. So these are right now vacant and they aren't offered. So this is not going to impact the current sports we offer. This is not going to impact the current clubs we offer. These are the things that traditionally we don't offer everything. Any further? Yeah. Yes.
I would agree with Madam Chair regarding that there are things that are not offered, that have not been offered for one reason or another. What we're trying to do is to migrate some of that money into stipend positions that are more exciting, newer, robotics, Lego robotics, and things like that. The kids are really excited about. So I do understand that cutting some of that money is, I think, reasonable. I would ask to leave us a little bit of slack in that account so that we can add those programs that the kids really get benefits from.
Yeah, I simply looked at what was vacant right now, so if there might be the robotics already in there. Actually, robotics did not want to be part of the budget last year.
Destination Imagination.
Destination Imagination, I knew there was something. So
I thought robotics was in here.
Yeah, I simply added up the ones that were vacant.
So, two comments I would make. When I was on the school board, we talked about doing something similar that the superintendent suggested, and I believe we were told by legal counsel that you cannot add things that are not in the teacher's contract. Cannot add a stipend that's not called out inside the teacher's contract unless the verbiage has changed.
May I comment on that? I would agree with that, and I think that we've developed a very good working relationship with the teachers in terms of adding a particular stipend program. If it's a good program for kids and teachers are interested in it, and we have done some additional programs that way with negotiations with the teachers.
I would just caution you that the people did not approve that expenditure. They approved the expenditures that are in the contract.
Well, I think the people approve the bottom line of the contract, and the people approve the net expenditures, and I think that how we utilize those expenditures to best serve our children is the job of the educators.
You just don't want to open yourself up, that's all.
As your motion stands, I will have to abstain.
Okay.
I would certainly enjoy a split of the motion.
So, I'm sorry, because I had to
Go ahead.
away, so it's all the vacant positions, what's the total amount of the reduction?
So the total is $37,180. It's a little over $4,000 co-curricular at the middle school, a little over $7,000 co-curricular at the high school, and a little over $15,000 athletic. And these are vacant. These are what we currently do not offer these activities.
But these, like, just looking at the athletics, I mean, basketball might be vacant, but I'm pretty sure we still have that basketball team, right? So
3-on-3 basketball, freshman basketball we don't offer. I'm not sure what HV baseball is, but it's vacant.
Varsity baseball, that would just be a vacant position.
That's because the coach retired.
Okay. Okay. So I'll accept an amendment then if there's a better number. But these are, my goal was, these things that we do not offer. It's 1420 athletic activities is the one sports piece. The others are co-curricular, so those are clubs and
So is there one position that we're concerned about?
So apparently baseball is just, there's no coach because he retired.
And how much is that?
So that's $3,136.
So I will make a motion to amend your motion by adding that amount back to what you reduced.
Okay.
That way it will,
Is that the only spot that's just being a placeholder?
I would have to look at the whole thing.
it's a
What's that?
bottom line budget, they can
I
find
mean,
it.
that's not a quick answer.
Yeah, that's fine, but I still want to make an articulate
Yeah.
decision. as to whether-
But at least we'll have that baseball covered.
Because when the,
That's
Do you
fine.
know how much,
The motion's made, was it seconded? Okay.
out of that money, how much would you be looking to reallocate?
How much does that?
That's what I'm working on.
I would think an annual reallocation of in the $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 range. It would not be anywhere near the total amount of money that Cindy's suggesting.
So what do you think, $30,000 amended?
Can we do that, though? Or are we opening ourselves up potentially to an issue?
No.
That's their problem, don't worry about it. Their problem. Their problem.
So there is a motion on, there's an amendment which is to reduce the amount by the baseball. So we would either have to,
Vote that down and then add a new amendment?
it would either have to be removed in order to be another
All
amendment.
right, so do you want to remove your second, and I'll withdraw my motion? Because I guess we're going to increase the amount, we're going to reduce it by. Increase the amount of...
Okay, so the amendment
Has been withdrawn.
has been withdrawn.
And we will amend it to add 6,000 to it?
Well, did you
I was gonna say, the cut, you said 37,000.
So do you want to make it 30?
Nice round number of $30,000.
Okay, so the amended motion is for $30,000.
Second that.
Any further discussion? And again, it's other programs, the 1400 series, which covers two areas, co-curricular and athletic. Those are two areas in there. Student activities and self-funded programs are also in there, but I'm only calling out those two. So
we need to vote on the amendment.
So, are Jen and Dennis going to have to?
yeah, I have to.
It's athletics.
They have to abstain salaries, so.
To keep it clean as to why it...
Yeah, well, I was just thinking because these are vacant positions, if that made a difference. So they're not voting on, or at least Jen's not voting on something that she has authority over. So that's why I'm trying to think this through. Dennis, your position is a little different. I think you will have to abstain.
You can tell me, I don't have to, but I'm going to.
Yeah. So I guess I'll leave that up to you. I'm just trying to think this through before we take the vote.
Yeah, I would be abstaining from this.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of reducing 30,000 from 1,400 other programs signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain?
Aye.
Okay, so, 2, so it's 4, right? 412. It passes.
You did it.
Just gotta figure it out. All right, so 100, so... Okay, are there any other motions to be made?
Oh, we have to vote on that one, or, we voted on the amendment, right? We had to
No,
revote.
someone withdrew there.
Right, but we amended your initial one.
Right, so that was on the amended motion, thank you, Carrie. So now we have to vote on the...
Actual reduction.
The actual motion, which is, again, back to the 30,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
You're opposed.
Sorry.
And 2 abstain.
Aye.
Okay. All right.
So out for a minute there. It's late.
It is late. That's what I'm trying. I don't want to rush us, but I want to make sure that we're moving along. Are there any other motions tonight?
So I have one, but I'd like to gang it together, but I don't know that I can. I think I can.
Why can't you?
Well, I gotta make sure they're in the same grouping. Okay, I think I can. And then I'll explain after the motion. So I'm gonna make a motion to reduce, let me get the rate. Building services, 2620 by $11,500.
11,500.
500.
Okay.
All right, second.
So the breakdown of that is there's $2,000 reduction in sewer and grease traps. The last 2 years have been $1,800, and I didn't see a rationale for why it would go up by $2,000. And then $5,000 in LMS electric and $4,500 in GMS electric, based on the 3-year average plus the 2.5% increase.
Good.
So this is based on history?
Isn't that how he came up with his number?
Well, so I was looking at that while you were having a spirited debate about co-curricular, since I knew how I was voting on that one. So for like LMS electric, taking it out of the budget, the 3 years where we have actuals was 116, 116, and 137, which I came out to be 121,750, and then when you add 2.5%, you get to 124,000, which is about $5,000 less than what I think was requested, if I did my math correctly.
I'd be more interested in knowing like the kilowatt hours that were used over the course of the year, because if they're all similar and the rates keep going up, it really should be adding 2.5% to the latest number, not the 3-year average. Because I assume we use similar amount of electricity every year, quantity-wise.
That was based on 3 years. It was an adjustment down, I believe, at all 3 locations based on the 3-year. We also do have I think we have a new contract in place for over the winter. I'd have to get the specifics on that. But those rates change.
Oh, I know, I
each
just
year.
signed my contract.
Yeah. They're a good time.
Wasn't fun.
All right, any further discussion? The motion is for building services, 2620, 11,500, and Dennis has it as a total over, smaller amounts over several areas.
3 line items, yeah.
Three different line items.
I'm not sure that I think that it should go there, but I think that in the course of the budget, since it's a bottom line budget, and...
Well, that's exactly where, I'm just saying, that's where the 3 line items are.
I'm going to vote in favor of it, even though I'm not sure how the electric quantities are and what the rates are. I just think there's money in the budget to cover it, even if it goes a little higher, so...
So it's 2,600 to 2,699, plant operations and maintenance is where it is in the...
And it's actually 2620 is the specific number.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of $11,500 reduction in plant operations and maintenance signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain. So the motion passes 4-3.
Was there a second motion to have, or?
No, that was, I was trying to figure out if I could gang them together, because they were all in the same thing or not.
Find that.
Oh, I do have a question. In the salaries and benefits budget, there's 6-period classes as a block up at the top. And then down inside the individual salaries, there's $6,776 for one person for 6 period.
You should see at the very end of that line, wherever it is, a reduction. That shouldn't be there, because we normally keep it lumped up at the top.
Okay, let me just look. Oh, okay, I missed that, thank you. I do have a general question about 6 periods. I know it's challenging to schedule at the high school. Looking at the budget, it looked like it was at 29,000. That whole line item from the previous year was just 6 period, which it looks like it was. That's what we budgeted for 18, and now we're budgeting 42,000, but we're losing students. I'm confused by.
There are some challenges with 6 blocks, particularly when you're trying to offer sort of high-level programming. You have teachers who are actually combining multiple levels of courses in the same classroom in order to sort of keep down the number, or keep up the number of students in class. But we still have to provide opportunities for some of our both the highest level students and also students. So that requires some really unique scheduling for some of our teachers.
Also, we had a reduction of 0.5 position in science for this current year, and some of that 0.5 position has been filled by the 6-block schedule.
Okay, because my particular concern when I looked at the class sizes, the stated goal is 25, and I know you can't divide the 9th and the 10th and the 11th and 12th grade into classroom sizes, but 1, 2, 3, 4 English classes are all 20, with one of them being 10. 3 math classes below 15. 2 math are AP, I believe, that are at 8. All the science are at 8 for AP.
We're not touching AP.
No, I'm not suggesting to. I'm just, it seems illogical outside of the reduction of a half-time science teacher, which I would say read that down. There's a whole lot of small classes that are being run in the high school, and I know it's a challenge, but when, I just go back to, students are going down. The way we scheduled last year might not work this year and probably won't work next year, so I'm assuming guidance is doing that. It just seems counterintuitive that we're going to go up by $13,000 when we're dropping 30-some students at the high school.
I had a comment about special services, because some of our smaller section classes are specifically to accommodate students with disabilities, so as opposed to a $75,000 placement out of district, we're maintaining them in district by offering smaller class sizes. We also have 6 blocks that is 1-to-1.
But I'm not counting any of the one-to-ones. I didn't factor any of those in. I was looking at, when the list came in, I was looking at English, and it says, this teacher has 6 blocks, and 4 of her classes are under 20.
I looked through all
That's this year.
of those. Yeah, I looked through all of our core sections, so 350 sections of courses. We have 49 of those sections, or 14% are under 10 students, okay? But then I further broke it down and I looked at it and I said, how many of those are combined classes? Whereas you have 1 or 2 students in a computer science class working with another in the same one as another. So there were 15 of those 49 for combined classes, in order to sort of maximize one teacher dealing with multiple kids. That's about 4% of the total. We had 18 classes which were regular education classes, for around 10 overall students. 16 of those classes were either honors level courses, AP level courses, and you have narrow.
I understand, that's why I was ignoring that.
Or they're your most struggling students. So out of that 14%, you're talking 5%, 5%, 4%, out of that whole 350 courses that we offer, or 350 sections that we offer. So it's a troubling number in one way, but in another way, a small school, you got to maximize as much as you can. And that's, I will say that Jody did an incredible job with the schedule to sort of work those pieces of the puzzle.
Okay. I was just curious when you look at the numbers, somebody would look at it and say, we're averaging 6 students under, and I know that you can't do the straight division, which is why I wanted to understand.
All right, I'm going to stop us. We have other opportunities. When we receive our warrant articles, we have opportunities at a hearing, we have opportunities at deliberative session. So as more information becomes available, we can certainly take a look, a renewed look at numbers if we need to. Where we end up tonight, the budget is $67,818 over last year's budget. It's an increase of $67,818. Our reductions are $545,591. So I think that as we go forward with warrant articles, as we go forward with taking a look at now the loss in revenue and what our revenue looks like, we'll get a better picture hopefully soon of what this impact is going to be on the tax rate and make some additional decisions going forward. So I do thank you all for your hard work. We did run over by about a half an hour tonight, but hopefully this has been a streamlined process. I mean, we've had some very difficult decisions to make, and I do appreciate, everybody's time and everybody's effort. There's no town representative here with us tonight, so unless...
Let's do a lot of town, let's cut the town budget line.
We should. So if there's no public input, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So made.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will be back next week, December 7th, and we will be working on town warrant articles, and any changes that the town has made in the town.
Have we